Hello and welcome to Reanimated, everybody. This is episode 302. I am Stuart, and joining me is the inimitable H.A. Conrad from Brooklyn. How are you today?
I am smashing and a little sleepy, but still smashing. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, well, bring all of that smashing, sleepy energy to the show today as we discuss the third and fourth episodes of season 11, Walking Dead Prime, where some smashing happens, actually, and some sleepiness. But we will get to that after there's a fair amount of news, because guess what? It's October 2nd, and the floodgates were opened. The last few weeks, we've looked at the news out there and been like, what? Where is it? And here it is. It's here. It was here all along.
It's back.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of trailers have dropped for things that are going to be on Netflix. Huluween is on now. I haven't even had a chance to see what's coming up in Huluween, but at least for Netflix, there are a couple of spooky movies. What did you think of these trailers?
Well, I had seen the Night Teeth trailer. Some friends of mine, we are, actually trying to get motivated and do a little bit of a like horror film club. So we've yet to get that off the ground, but there's actually a lot of like cool trailers out there. Night Teeth has it's I think the most well-known person in it is Megan Fox, so that's been getting like a lot of play. And it's very it's the trailer looks pretty good. And the one thing I will say is that production value wise, like just for horror films, these things look pretty good. I can't
Yeah.
speak to how good they will be in their full run, but at least from the trailer point of view, the production quality looks great. So I'm definitely looking forward to this, and I thought that at least the way they cut the trailer, the script seems good, and I'm gonna definitely watch it.
Yeah, Night Teeth
And
had a real Collateral vibe to me. That
yeah,
movie
definitely.
starring Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx from
Yep.
a long time ago now, but it's like, yeah, hitman hires a taxi. In this case, it's going to be vampires hire an
Yep.
Uber, I think.
Yep.
But
Yep. And it's like club kids and that kind of thing going on in New York, but so that's kind of fun. And then Army of Thieves, which is another Zack Snyder thing, is like prequel to Army of the Dead. So not too many zombies in it, and people were like kind of lamenting this, but if it's a prequel, I guess that makes sense given that the wherever the world they're in is a little bit ahead of that, and this is probably the origin story of that. So maybe you'll get a little bit more of information about how this group of these zombies evolved in the alpha piece and that kind of thing. So
maybe, I mean, based on the trailer and this article from
maybe not.
Screen Rant that was attached to it, there's like, I would say less than a second of zombies in the trailer,
Yeah,
which
very
is
little.
it's very understandable because this is set in Europe. It's a prequel. The zombies rather never really made it out of Las Vegas. We know that from the Army of the Dead. So yeah, there's very little reason for there to be a big zombie element to this, but it's going to be a heist movie, which that'll be
Yeah,
fun anyway. And there will be a tiny bit of zombies in it. I think we'll watch it, but we might not be able to review this for the podcast.
agree. And then in Halloween fun, we've got, of course, in Texas, there is a zombie paintball thing that people can do
It's a
in
safari.
October. It's a safari, and people pay some money, and then they go and shoot zombies from these like vehicles. So you
It
can.
looks like, to me, actually, it looks like kind of a lot of fun. If you watch the YouTube or the video, you've got actors or people out in the field wearing like a fair amount of armor, dressed up as
Well,
zombies.
I would imagine that they're gonna have to have a lot of padding because those paintballs hurt.
But
So
that's great. It's not like they just have to shoot at mannequins there, so they're going to
right,
be hopefully well compensated
for there
volunteers,
to be
workers out
zombie
there
target practice.
who are going to be wandering around getting shot at. And it like the paintball guns were like mounted on the sides of this troop transport truck. So it just looked like it would be a real hoot to do with friends. That's all. Like up to 16 people shooting at those Some of them were slow. I saw one clip in the video showed just a guy not wearing a lot of armor, just sprinting across the field of fire, which maybe they just do to dare each other. But I would totally have a good time doing this.
Last but not least, although I do have one thing to add, not necessarily zombie related, but New York Times had an article out just about the science of zombie plants and parasites. And it basically was talking about the mechanism of this specific parasite that kind of takes over a plant. Then like, those things are sort of, it has ways to sort of propagate itself and go out, not perfectly, but just sort of the science of it is kind of interesting, for those of you interested in that nerdy stuff. But it's the way that most parasites kind of work, which is that they kind of take over a host and they sort of hijack whatever the host systems are in order to keep itself going.
But one of the, I would say the creepiest things about this one is that it actually just like arrests its growth in the juvenile stage so that it can't get to like a reproductive stage for the plant
like
itself.
it kind of needs it to be sterile so that it can be the sort of keeper basically,
which is actually a pretty scary premise for a zombie story. I don't know. Right. All kids.
And then the last thing that I was gonna mention, I don't know if you saw the trailer for this, but it's out October 15th, and it's a film called Antlers, and it's produced by Guillermo del Toro. The trailer looks pretty good. It's directed by Scott Cooper and stars Kerry Russell, who you may remember, from many things. But Felicity Days is probably the thing that most people know her from. However,
you didn't put this in the show notes. I don't know what we're looking at.
I didn't, but I will put it in now. It just, the Night Teeth trailer reminded me that I probably should have put it in there. But just thinking about production value and like sort of what's out there now, like not even though this is like non-zombie stuff, I think that there's a lot coming out at the moment, which is pretty good. I am kind of excited for all the stuff that's just sort of like we were both lamenting how little like stuff was out there right now, and it this is sort of like, well, I guess there's more things to come, and October was just sort of waiting to dump it on us, right?
It was just waiting out there in the dark.
Yeah. There's also lots of like weird horror films coming out. One of the weirdo ones, I don't know if you saw this, was like the one where it's like a very strange like a car that like is like possessed or something. It's like a little like Christine like it's called Titane or Titan, and it's like, there's like I think that the premise is that a female serial killer becomes pregnant with some kind of a cyborg or something after having sex with a car.
Oh
yeah, it's like very it's very odd. So lots of interesting stuff coming your way. This is a French film, so I don't know, somebody just was really into Christine and like RoboCop or something and decided to mash the two up. I'm just speaking out of hand because I have really no idea what this is about. I just saw like a very brief trailer of it, actually related somehow. It was like tagged in with the Antlers thing, which that doesn't make sense to me, but in any case, just putting it out there. Lots of good stuff coming at us in October. We'll try to cover it all.
Well, yes, staying within our wheelhouse.
Within our zombie genre. We will not be talking about the car sex thing, but it is funny. But in the meantime, we're going to be chatting about the next couple episodes out of this season of The Walking Dead, which is Hunted and Rendition. Very, very Reaper, Daryl focused episodes.
Well, no, the Hunted does not feature Daryl at all, but Reaper.
Oh no, yes. Not. But I mean, eventually it does. But we've got like the Reaper, more Reaper action. We figure it out a little bit later, what's going on with them. But definitely the second episode, Rendition, is a very Daryl focused episode. And again, I had to stop myself because I wanted to move forward and I did not.
Well, if
Because
you had, I mean, I'm so glad that we didn't, because honestly, if we had seen the next ones, our little death pool that we started last week would have been fruitless. But in this case, we were able to almost immediately see
see,
see how accurately we had predicted
and
the future.
we were pretty accurate. I mean, we were
Uh,
semi-accurate.
Certainly, yeah. So by the end, so in Hunted, the last week, just to recap, anybody who didn't listen to us last week, we were at the end of the second episode of the season. We were like, all right, who's going to be left alive out of this mission? Because it's definitely feeling like a doomed outing, right? And so
Yeah,
we
but
decided that all of Maggie's people were going to die,
yeah, and that pretty much happened.
with one exception that we
One
know of.
exception. Yep. Um, and spoiler, Maggie and Negan did not have sex yet.
That's a slow boil. That's gonna. I mean, you see the way they're. And anyway, they're set up for that now, because at the end of this episode, they have to go off together. And yes,
Right?
they're giving each other stink eye, but as you pointed out, like that sort of intensity can only. I mean, it can result in some pretty hot
I feel
stuff.
I feel like my odds are still pretty good on this.
I hate you for potentially being right, but I'm selecting the bottle of wine that I have to ship to you.
But in any case, I don't know, like there was, so we knew that they came up upon the town, and it was kind of weird because nobody's sort of taking cover, and you've got a line of Reapers and a line of Maggie's people. And it's sort of like bad idea in terms of like, stealth. But in any case, it's like a pretty fast sort of battle scene,
Oh
lots of
yeah.
action going on, and you can't tell all the time what's happening.
I went back and I rewinded several times through this
Yeah,
first
and it was
5 minutes.
but it was still pretty. I mean, it was a little bit hard to follow about who was, doing what.
Well,
But
like so many people get hurt. It's
mhm,
actually it's really difficult to keep track of. And I was kind of convinced that, well, so Alden is hit, right?
yeah,
At the end of the first episode, at the end of the episode preceding this, we'd seen Cole get hit in the leg,
yep.
and Roy Roy had
Sorry,
also taken that.
I'm the one who keeps
You
calling
put
him
Rob in my head.
up,
You put
but it is
so
Roy.
Roy is down, and it looks like he's not getting back up despite
No,
my
so
desire.
our wishes on that front are sad, but
Yeah.
that's a bummer.
But Alden is hitting maybe in the leg or somewhere. Cole is just straight up
Done.
a knife across the throat, as he's trying to hobble away. Duncan is hit 3 times, and it's kind of
Yep.
hard to see what do you think the Reapers are using? Is just like a variety of throwing daggers and stuff?
It seems like throwing daggers. Again, that was part of what I was trying to figure out, like if they had like a specific weapon that they were using. It was hard to tell, but it feels like more like throwing daggers and that kind of thing. But it also felt like kind of projectile-y in a couple of spots. So I was like,
They
oh,
have bows. Like Roy
yeah, so
gets taken out by a
he got an
bow.
arrow. Yeah. So, but in any case, and then Alden, I admit, I really like Alden, and I kind of felt like that was going to be, um, like I did worry, like even when we were talking, I was like, oh man, Alden's in for it, especially when they talk about like his kid. Like I'm like, doesn't bode well. But
So yeah, I mean, this him getting hit at the beginning of this episode's just literally the
yeah.
beginning, like because he
Mhm.
goes through some pretty rough stuff in this episode.
Yep.
Duncan looks like he's basically done for after he gets hit with 3 daggers in
Yep.
question marks at the beginning. Uh, Negan is even hit in the leg, but he
Yep.
doesn't seem to have any lasting consequences
Nope.
from that. He bounces right back. Gabriel gets stabbed or sliced on the neck,
Yeah.
and at first you're like, oh my gosh, but then he shows up later in this episode, and it looks like a cat scratched him. It does not look
Yep. It
deep.
does not look like anything. And and they kind of get separated out. Like Gabriel like goes off and shows his wrath of God, or wrath of Gabriel, I guess is a better way to
Later
put it.
on. Yeah, there's a
Um,
lot of religion happening in these episodes too, as it turns out the Reapers are kind of fundamentalists, which is, I don't know,
mhm.
I think this at this point, sure, okay, we haven't really delved into that as a theme in the show yet, so maybe that's okay. Elijah, literally, you said they get separated. Elijah is the one member of Maggie's crew by the end of these 2 episodes that we do not know his fate. He's
Mhm.
literally dragged away into the dark, and Maggie is just like, no, it doesn't know where he's gone, and then they get separated.
Yep. And I think that this is obviously, and she's left with basically, Negan to deal with, and that is sort of the ongoing, once again, her like very poor leadership, and she's got to deal with Alden and Negan, and Alden is like very injured. It's so much so that it's like, just from a like tactical point of view and an escape point of view, it's hard, but it's like, what do you do with him? And that becomes like a tension point. But even he knows that he can't move as quickly and that he's a liability to them. And then the other piece of this is, what are they going to do next? And I have to say, like, Negan is kind of like, well, we lost basically. Like, these people are crazy.
I
This
don't really
is
get that line where he's like, they just showed us just how crazy they are. And
I don't know that they have. I mean, I think they are crazy, but like, I think it would have been better to say, we are now
dangerous.
totally they're dangerous and we're outnumbered, and like, this is just a bad idea, and just does not seem like there is no sort of plan at this point. Like, we have no chance. It's like, they see how many people they've taken out, and just from they have lost the element of surprise, because obviously the Reapers knew exactly where they were.
Yeah.
And so it was just very, very odd. And
Yeah, the Reapers suffer from this thing the Walking Dead does to their villains, which is makes them kind of omniscient. Like the God, I'm glad that I've forgotten the Whisperer's name for a second, but there it is. They always seem to know exactly what, Rick or not Rick, but what the good guys were up to. And the Reapers know that these guys are coming, and maybe it's because Roy tipped him off when he went up from the subway potentially, but it's just like they knew they were going to be there. Also, what was kind of hilarious in this episode is in the preamble, the voiceover is like Maggie saying, all we know about them is they always come at night, and they're lethal. And then here we are walking towards their base at night. And I'm like, are you dumb?
yeah, well, and then there's good one-off lines, like, where they're walking, and Negan's like, okay, cool, we'll go towards the screaming. All right.
Yeah.
Like, he's got some good writing and good delivery. And that's the thing. It's like, the beginning of this episode, we see most of her people get taken out, and then we see even more of them get taken out, like Gage, and Agatha, and they kind of have to put Gage down.
Duncan.
Oh, sorry, is
Gage
that
was
Duncan?
killed 2 episodes
Sorry,
ago.
Gage was cool. Sorry about that. Duncan is the really big guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He was the one who got stabbed or thrown. He had 3 daggers in him or whatever at the
Right.
beginning
But
of the episode.
and so apparently he's still living, and they do the deed with him, and then as they're moving away from that, Agatha gets like overwhelmed by walkers.
How
And
ridiculous. I'm sorry, but that
I
was
know, agreed.
completely egregious. As a 6 or 7 year zombie survivor, she's going to get bit, like be eaten by a zombie at this stage, unless there's like really super crazy circumstances. It's
Right.
not, it's
And there wasn't.
unacceptable.
I agree. And there was like just sort of there was no reason why she couldn't have survived this, like the way they set it up. But this is a little bit like Carl's invisible bite, right? Like, they had to do something, and they did. And, but that's the thing. It's like, it gets even more ridiculous because then Maggie's like, oh, let's go to the storehouse and see where everybody else is meeting us up. And Negan's like, who is meeting us there? Like there is nobody meeting us. They're just drawing those lines of tension between the two of them.
Does also feel like they're not in the city anymore, and I'm not sure how they got out of the subway and we're suddenly in the countryside.
Right, like, that's kind of confusing. So there is, and I think that in terms of the setup and whatever, I think we see enough of that. But it did feel kind of like more and more of the repeat action. But maybe it's to show just how weird and hopeless this is, or how outnumbered they feel. Because they do, and they are definitely the hunted at this point.
Yeah, but they also, you get to see them kill, I think 3, at least 2. They kill 2 and injure 1 Reaper during this episode, maybe 3.
Right.
And I don't think really feel the implications of that in the next episode. It's only 1 Reaper who seems to have been killed somehow.
Right. But like, and that's the thing, like, Gabe definitely, it seemed like there were more, and they only seemed to mention the one. And Gabe basically, takes out the one that we see
Oh,
deliberately.
that's the third, second, because I thought the one that Maggie kicked down the stairs was dead, but maybe what we hear is him get up and start running up the stairs
Mm,
again after she kicks him down the stairs. Maybe that's what that sound was.
okay.
I thought that mall was a pretty good set, honestly. The one
It was a
thing,
fun, yeah, no, that was a good set.
it was just that it was clearly already abandoned before the apocalypse.
Right.
Instead of being like I mean, it was probably pretty hard to get into a mall that actually had all the stores in it, like a la Dawn of the Dead. But I think, it's obviously a bit of a tip of the cap to that.
Yep.
Uh, and then the fight scenes in there they would have been better if it hadn't been so much emphasis on these people and lots of different people's ability to just appear out of thin air.
Right.
Like the Reapers did, like Negan did. Alden and Maggie kind of almost stabbed each other, but that one was okay.
Yep.
But Negan comes out of nowhere and they're in this giant empty room and
Right.
suddenly Negan's just there.
Right. And making no noise, right? Like so many.
Maybe it was him who opened the door and made the bottle fall off the door handle, which also I like that detail.
That was good.
But yeah, they definitely kill one of those two Reapers. The other one gets the dagger in the back and then throws a flashbang like a ninja and disappears. And I guess that was bossy because I think we see what happens to him in the next episode.
Yeah.
And I think he might be the guy with the Judas sign above him at the end of this episode. Like the chronology is a little bit.
It's a little bit off, right?
Crazy. Yeah. But I thought that was still a good set in the mall. But I just felt like this was kind of predictable. I guess what's not predictable is what's going to happen to Alden. They end up sealing him up in that church and you're just kind of like, oh, is he dead? When we look at his wound, I didn't get the impression that it looked that serious either, even though we'd heard stabbing noises.
It was it like a gut thing is not good from an infection point of view, so
Right.
I guess my concern is that they're going to come back and he'll be all walkered up in there.
But was it deep? It didn't, like when they actually show the wound, it just looks like two lines across his midsection. It didn't look like it was open. There was no sign of his guts.
Right. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there, but it does not bode well when they leave him there. And
you definitely are like, it's probably 80-20. He's going to be a zombie when they come back.
Yep. And then meanwhile, back at the ranch or Alexandria, we also have the other story going on where Carol is, sort of, she's everybody has their own idea about how Alexandria is going to survive and that they're starving. And, you've got Aaron who's like, hey, we've really got to do this fence and you're like ditching your duty. And she's like, we need horses or we can't do any of this stuff and then we'll all starve. And, she's like, she takes Rosita, Kelly, Magna, and they all go out to like find the horses. And, they definitely meet with sort of like frustration because they find some of the horses dead, and then there's this whole like moment where the horses appear in the rain around the field and they somehow miraculously find a paddock to put them in. And then when they they bring them back and there's this like triumph, like a moment of triumph, and then Carol like butchers one of the horses to feed everybody, which I don't know, I guess if they're that desperate, maybe, but I thought the whole point was to basically take them further afield so you could find more hunting ground or something. So I feel like that was like things must be more dire than somehow they're talking about. Because remember,
Gabriel said they had a week of food.
Right. Like, why would you I get that you might have to get it to that point, but it seemed a little crazy. Am I wrong? Did you feel like that? I felt like they weren't explaining the circumstances well enough, because the whole point of the horses is that they can plant more food, they can haul things, they can take them further afield to hunt.
But that was certainly how Carol sold her horse hunting mission to Aaron was, we need the horses to get that work done that you want to get done. She didn't say we need the horses for food, but that was clearly, and she had a hard time doing it, and sure, and it's tough to see beautiful horses get killed, so shortly after their beautiful God rays shot of them running through a field. But I also think that the show is kind of playing with our with our expectations there, just a smidge.
I felt like it was a little manipulative, and I also think that the other thing about horses is that they eat an incredible amount of food, so that was a sort of weird thing.
Well, maybe their hay stockpiles were fine. Everything else,
maybe.
well, the show definitely does not want to take pains to do everything the quote unquote right way. One scene or series of scenes that I thought were really good in this episode were the kids with Judith, RJ, Herschel, and was it Gracie maybe sitting around playing cards and then going after that horse meat at the end of the episode. I loved those scenes. I thought that everybody was like hitting their dialogue and those emotional beats, and I want to hear from these kids because they have that perspective of like, yeah, parents can't say things like "I'll be back soon" anymore. And I thought that to me the best part of the episode were those two scenes with those kids.
Oh yeah, and like the kids are kind of like, yeah, but they kind of need to feel it, so I guess you just let them get away with. Like there was this definite like these kids are not kids really, or they're not. Like they've been growing up in a zombie apocalypse, so that was kind of interesting. Where they're sort of I thought the dialogue there was good and not stilted as we've often seen in the show with kids.
Solid kid performances.
Yep. Very good. And then that's
kind of everything that happened in that episode. I mean, there's some stuff between Magna and Kelly and Carol about like expectations, and is Connie coming back, and you're trying to give her false hope and yada yada, and they're just setting it up for Connie to come back because we've seen Connie, right? We know Connie's walking around. She appeared at the end of the last season somewhere,
right?
Do we remember where that was?
She was like kind of walking through with the big crowd with the hospital, right? Like, so she was kind of in that big horde, I thought. Or we just see her walking around.
I think we just saw her, she just saw her walking around at some point, but she's definitely out there. And we just have to, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's some of the stuff that I've been seeing about this season is that I think there's a reunion coming up, but we'll find out how that's going to go. There's another reunion in Rendition, which I 100% saw coming. As soon as you see a female Reaper, you're like, yeah, okay, so that's Leah.
And also like there was so much Dog doing stupid things in this episode, and like Daryl doing things because of Dog, and Dog just kind of like roaming around.
No, when it was clear that Dog knows Daryl's sign language, I thought that was actually pretty cool. It was the one time I've seen Dog do something useful, but it was a little bit silly that with the lighting in that scene, their shadows were cast across the sidewalk in front of them where the Reaper could have seen them. And so I thought that was these Reapers are so freaking ninja. I was a little surprised that Daryl was silly enough to like stand where his shadow could be seen by the oncoming Reaper,
right? And he doesn't seem all that shocked to see Leah, like once he sees Dog sitting by her, but he definitely goes into Daryl like survival mode where he's giving up very little information. He he's definitely getting questioned and comes up with his own story, which is that he just like he's on his own, he's alone with Dog, and comes up with a narrative that's relatively believable, and doesn't even though he's getting, I mean, this is not exactly the best reunion in that like he is clearly happy that she's alive, but then he gets waterboarded and he knows that something's up. Like he's just sort of like, okay, well, Daryl isn't the luckiest in love, and this is just one more example of that. And basically she's in league with all these crazy people, and he gets like really tortured. Like this is not helpful.
It's just like a massive jumping in ceremony is this whole episode. And I think I have also needed to remind myself of like the circumstances of that one episode where we got to meet her and they, how
Yeah.
they left each other. And if I remember correctly, he was out living on the banks of the river by himself. That's how she
Yep.
had come across him and he across her.
Mhm.
So it makes sense. His story does kind of check out from that episode because he was
Yeah,
out
and
there
from
living
what
by
she
himself for years, wasn't he?
yeah, and what she knows about him. So it's not like she ever got to meet any of the people. And even when he talked about him, he probably, I mean, let's be honest, Daryl's not exactly expansive in his storytelling. He speaks very little, and I think at that point he was probably speaking less than ever. So she does not have a knowledge of a lot of the people.
He was just throwing fish at her front door from
Yeah.
12 feet away.
I mean, she knew a little bit about them, but not enough to know, like, because at that point, like, he was definitely a lone gunman kind of guy, and so that sort of washes with what she knows of him, so he can kind of get away with it. Um and we see a lot more about what makes up the Reapers. They're definitely, former military, then turned mercenary. They got this weird religious aspect to them, which I have to say is a little tired in terms of a narrative. Like another crazy religious guy kind of turning the circumstances of this world to his, benefit, basically his use. And
Is it tired in The Walking Dead, or is it just tired in sense of we all have seen this plot in other things?
I think plot in other things, but also in The Walking Dead, it's like, all right, here's the big bad of the season,
Oh
and it
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
totally make sense, like, and then,
What
in
I
terms,
did, what I do like about, okay, so things I like and dislike about the Reapers are that they are a finite number of people. It's like 15. Like Daryl just figured it out. Like
yeah,
Leah kind of gave him props for that. So we don't have this problem that we had with the Saviors, where you kill 30 of them and there's 400 more,
right,
right?
right, we don't have
Same with the Whispers. We never really had a sense of how many of them there were, even at the very end. It was really hard to tell. Um, and then things that I didn't like is that their origin story is kind of still too fresh in a way, in a weird way. Like
hmm
when Pope is telling Daryl about how they came about, it's all based on 8 years ago. And there's
right,
nothing about like what they're up to now. And maybe that's by design. We don't really, maybe he doesn't want to explain that they've just been going around raiding other settlements. And maybe that would be
right,
hard for Leah to sell also. Like, yeah, see, we're not so bad. We're just, we're raiders, which is what I assume they are if
right,
Maggie's story checks out. But some,
right.
like their origin story is like, sure, okay, that's what happened during quote unquote the fall, and the show has started using that term more. I've heard it twice this season already,
hmm
and I don't know that we heard it before. But that like, how is that your story? Like, how would Daryl explain his story? He's like, there's 11 seasons. You're gonna have to get
Right,
comfortable.
right,
This is gonna take a while. I don't
right.
know. So I feel like they're a little bit half baked, and they're focusing too much on this like 8 years ago event.
They are. And the other piece that just kind of troubled me about their whole narrative and story is like, okay, so this is how you evolved into that. And um, you have a finite number of people. So what happens at the end of this episode? I mean, they put Daryl through,
Completely insane. Yes.
right? Like they put Daryl through his sort of trial by fire, ha ha ha. And they're testing him, and it's deliberate, and they're testing his information and testing to see whether he would be a good addition ish, I guess. And he does have Leah vouching for him, which gives him somewhat more of an entree into this outfit. But he's also clearly a lone person, at least as far as she knows, and this is not necessarily a group. Like, I just don't know that they would trust somebody that quickly if they have only been in this sort of like weird little number. And then, they they seem to both take the loss of their one of their brotherhood or their like family, so to speak, very hard. But then in terms of the person that carried him back or whatever, the guy who plays Pope, who is a great actor and I really like him, um he, you know decides to show everybody who's boss. And I just feel like this kind of leadership is a little bit Negan like, but he doesn't really have enough people to be able to waste them like this, right? So this just felt strange to me. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts on that?
exactly that. It makes no sense that with that small a number and with their apparent tight bonds with one another, that's how that would go. No.
And it seems very like, I don't want to say spur of the moment. I mean, clearly he's thinking about it. He had been thinking about it. He did a little bit of a, oh, I'm gonna, compliment you for bringing the body back and all this other stuff, and then turns totally psycho and throws the dude into fire. And I just think, especially if this group is so tight knit, also so highly trained, and I would say that that training is difficult, long, and hard won. I just feel like this is a punishment that probably wouldn't happen and wouldn't fly. Like, I feel like if he actually was successful in doing what they're doing, he'd be able to figure out a way to preserve this person in the group, right? Versus kill him.
Yeah. And
So
they're gonna replace him immediately with Daryl, this unknown, with no
right.
with no test or trial period, or maybe that's what comes next. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense given their numbers and like you said, their history, what we know of it
Yeah.
anyway. It's kind of crazy that that Leah is inside the shack with him for the fire test. I mean, it makes sense now why she would have been like so useless during the breakout. She's just coughing in the corner, but I guess, in retrospect, she probably was going to be able to get out of there by herself no matter what. But I thought that was kind of an interesting scene. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it ending necessarily the way that it did. I definitely, mostly because I was surprised that they would consider jumping in Daryl so soon. But I think that they are kind of an interesting group. But they're gonna have to explain how they're following this kind of insane guy Pope. Leah does do a good job of showing how that she thinks he's kind of scary, but she also in their scene together is like very open with him and has like obviously it feels like they have a relationship of years, right? Because they're very emotionally open with one another, or it seems like they are.
Yeah. So, but there's a lot of like side eye once the sort of ending of this episode where it's like, okay, we're burning this guy up and now Daryl's one of us and whatever. And Daryl's just like, okay.
Daryl's expressions throughout
It's
this
great.
episode, he's just looking completely like I wouldn't want to play poker with Norman Reedus. He looks completely unreadable.
Yep.
And Frost, of course, who is the name of the Maggie's team member with hair. His name is Frost. He's still in jail, maybe hopefully still alive. He also got tortured and potentially didn't dime out Daryl or Alexandria, but we don't know. We weren't there for his interrogation.
Yep.
He did catch on to Daryl's
story,
like pretty quickly, because at first he was like, Daryl, how's everybody doing? Daryl's like, shut up. I don't know you. And then he's like, yeah, screw you, man. So I was glad to see that they played that fairly intelligently, but also the odds that either of them could hold out under torture. I've granted Daryl's been tortured before, and he kind of says that during this episode. He's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, we saw many torture episodes between him and Negan, and
him and the the lady who was friends with Michonne, who had the kid army.
Yeah, that's right.
Bad stuff.
Man, he's been tortured a lot. I didn't think about that.
He has been. So now he's a Reaper. Fortitudo Solaris. I don't remember what their Latin motto is that they all yell at him. But then he goes straight from that to moonshine, to eating whatever it is they're eating. And it's a night scene when they're having their dinner party. And I'm like, wait, they all appear to be there.
Yep.
So I guess it was just bad luck that Maggie came on a night when they weren't having a big barbecue, and they were all just instead walking down the road toward them.
In one line. One straight line.
So we end here, I guess. Agatha, Duncan, Gage.
Cole.
No, not Gage. Cole. Gage and Roy are dead already. Frost is still alive. Elijah, question mark. and Gabriel has just been out there in the woods killing reapers, and
Although
seems to
apparently only one, like, because
just the one,
yeah,
because that guy was already injured, and maybe they're like, what they hadn't shown in that before that scene was that they had been tussling, and that
right.
Gabriel had gotten the better of this dude. And then the dude wants to pray with him, and Gabriel's like, God's not here, which I don't know that we've heard. Have we heard him renounce God before? I don't know that we have.
No, no, but I think, they were priming this when
Yes.
the whole scene between, the episode with him and Aaron, and that Russian roulette episode. And, I think that clearly is informing where he is right now. So he's having some dark days, Father Gabriel.
Yeah, but he's got a kid back at camp too. It's kind of, I don't know. But yeah, he's having some dark times, but that probably makes for a more survivable Gabriel. We'll see.
We'll see.
The show will choose between him and Alden, or maybe choose both of them, or neither of them.
Yes, we
And
shall see.
we'll see. But so what are our expectations for next episode? Do we think Connie, Kelly are reunited? Probably, right?
I think probably, or
And
if not next episode, maybe the following one, but that's coming up soon. It's got to be.
it has to be with all the table setting they're doing.
Yep.
Alexandria will have to find another food source.
Right.
So like I'm kind of like, why aren't they fishing?
Right.
Unless all the waterways are like somehow polluted by the breakdown of civilization, there should be tons of fish.
Yep.
So they should hopefully find a good fishing hole or something, rather than trying to find like, the table scraps of the world that was. I think that they need something sustainable. So that has to be established.
And they need something sustainable. And there are a lot of them, but there are not so many of them that, like, I still feel like the hunting piece, it's like, okay, so maybe immediately near them is sort of hunted out, but like probably there's some like area that they haven't, there's just not enough people for everything to be decimated.
Yeah.
So I feel like they are not, and for people that have survived this long, like I do feel like there are things that they haven't done yet that they could be doing. The fish is the obvious piece. And so we'll see what happens, but maybe now that they have the horses, they'll be able to find new hunting ground, to
Something
keep
along those
everybody
lines.
going. But
yeah, we Jerry was completely absent in this episode too, and Nabila. So there's still a couple of named characters. Scott, am I thinking of the right guy? Is it Scott or yeah? Sonequa Martin Green's husband.
yeah.
He hasn't been in any of these episodes in a while, but as far as we know, he's still a member of the cast. So there's a few Alexandrians we haven't seen. We're seeing some like people that we've never seen before.
Right. Just in the background or just randomly shown,
or just looking happy about
horses.
horses. Yeah. So there's still some people that we need to kind of like get involved in this season, and I guess we'll find out what happened to Elijah.
Yeah.
Alive or dead?
Well,
what do you think?
I think he's got to be alive since they haven't shown him dead.
Because they kind of developed his emotional stuff.
Right.
He has to have a journey. Yeah.
And maybe I don't know, maybe he finds Connie, who knows.
And what is the deal with him? He's not a Reaper. Are we supposed to believe that?
I think we are, but maybe because I don't think that he really fits their profile, right?
I mean, he has the mask and he has the jaggy psi weapons.
Maybe maybe he's come to this on his own, who knows. But in any case, we'll find out more, but I think he's probably got to be alive. What do you think?
I agree. Yeah, I think he has to be alive. I'm just kind of surprised that they've just gotten him. He's just been gone for a couple episodes, and I guess that they do that a lot on the show. It's a big ensemble cast, so they need to give other people's stories room to breathe. Clearly Rendition was all about us getting to know a little bit about the Reapers, enough for Daryl to get jumped in. Apparently, one criticism of this episode from Forbes and Eric Kane was that it was too much like the Claimers storyline, with Daryl getting into another gang and then looking at them all with with a blank expression.
Yep.
Except with the Claimers, of course, he kind of was going along with it, right? For the most part.
Yeah, like I think I kind of felt the same way as, again, like this was just like a tired storyline, and we'll have to see again. And also like the torture, the like whatever, we've seen Daryl here before, but maybe that's deliberate in that, he's just like, enough of this already. I don't want to be in your gang. so
Torture
so
is the
we'll see what,
fastest way to become friends with people, right? So
mm,
nothing like a little waterboarding to make fast friends.
right.
But so
So
we don't
anyway,
really know what's coming up for us. Maggie and Negan are going to have to find either the store of food and Elijah or something, and then have some sort of interaction with the Reapers at some point. But at this point, their plan has failed, and there is a bit of funny dialogue earlier on with Alden and Maggie, where he's like, "Listen, if if you lose it all now, you're everything you've worked for. If your plan doesn't work, everything you've worked for will be for nothing." And I'm just like, no, the plan already clearly failed. You
right.
guys got ambushed on the road, and
It's
more than
yeah.
half of you are dead. So you're done.
You're kind of done. And which Negan is pointing out, and Negan's like, "Hey, I'm on your side. Like, I'm not trying to be like a jerk. I'm just, you know, pointing out the obvious that you should see, given that you're supposed to be leading." So still the same issues with Maggie's leadership, unfortunately, and maybe we'll see some kind of evolution here. Um, there was also a moment where both like Maggie and Alden and Alden specifically says to like Negan, like, you got to stop doing what you're trying to do, which is like, you are not the leader here, basically. And it's like, well, that's all well and good, but Maggie is not exactly displaying the best leadership and has not been during this entire mission. So, it's interesting just how the tables turn a little bit. So we shall see what happens in the next couple episodes.
Yeah.
If you have any thoughts about it, dear listeners, please send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can leave it on the site, reanimatedpodcast.com, or you can tweet at us, which is reanimatedpcast, being the Twitter handles. But looking forward to looking at the rest of this. I do like coming back into this world, and I'm enjoying watching it. I kind of want more. I want the story to move forward a little bit more in the next one. So hopefully that's what will happen.
Yeah, I agree. It could pick up, I guess, the pace a smidge. We got a lot of good action, good fight choreography in these episodes, or at least certainly in Hunted. And I'm hoping that the storyline doesn't go on forever. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't want the Reapers to hang out for too long
No,
as a
agree.
big bad. Okay, but then thank you for joining us, and come back again next time. We'll continue along this trail, and then, gosh, we're gonna have to make some decisions in mid-October, because a lot of things are happening. I think this season
Yeah.
is taking a break, and then Fear the Walking Dead starting, as well as all of the Halloween stuff out there. So
All right. Well, we'll have to confer and make a decision. But lots of
indeed,
cool stuff that I think will probably keep us busy through the holidays. So,
absolutely. All right. Well, for now, thank you for listening, and ta-ta.
ciao.